Welcome back to Global Impacts and Stage 7, the usage stage of a garment. Probably the most important stage out of all of the 8 stages because it uses more of the Earth's resources than any of the other stages. Perhaps wet processing is borderline. You could argue that one's the same. But usage um, is certainly the king of the problems, and it's also the one that's least considered by the fashion industry. So it has the most opportunity for brands to actually do something with this that's quite visible and tangible in its effects. Take you back to the people with nature model. Don't forget you should be including this in your final assessment answer at some point, simply because it expresses the relationship between people, the social systems, the big yellow ball, and the earth. And what we do as people is we extract resources from the earth. And as we do so, we should be thinking about how it impacts the 9 planetary boundaries. So if I take this water, if I take this land, if I throw away this garment, what impact will it have on my 9 planetary boundaries? Then in the social system is where we transform the raw material into a fabric, a garment, into wearing that garment, and then finally we will discard that garment or put it back into the ecosystem. All the while, excuse me, all the while we should be considering the um, the rights of people and whether they have a decent standard of living. So the usage stage is pretty simple. We all know it, we all engage in it. First thing we do is we wear an article of clothing. Then once we're finished with it, once we've worn it, we will wash it, then we'll dry it, and we may or may not press it depending on which garment it is and what our personal preferences are. Traditionally, it's the end of the process for a company, which simply means under a linear model, once a company sells a product, then they say, we've done our job, we've succeeded, we can put a tick next to our range, it was successful. A holistic model says that perhaps a company should take an interest in the garment even after it's sold. The company should be involved in that garment as the customer uses it. And I'll give you some examples later on of where we're starting to see companies do that. So they're blurring the lines between transfer of ownership and responsibility, not necessarily at the same point in the life of a garment. The objective of fashion is to allow us all to express who we are and what we feel. So remembering we've gone through all of these stages, which are by and large consequences of this objective. You know, you're putting a range together because you want customers to buy it, obviously, and you want them to buy it because you want the customer to have garments available that allows them to express who they are. So I've just put up a few images here to remind you of what fashion is and the breadth of fashion. So you obviously know fashion from the couture perspective, you know, the Karl Lagerfelds, the Versace's, etc. But all of these images of fashion, even this guy on the couch is also making a statement with clothes. And that statement is he's quite relaxed, he's chilled, he wants simple choices when it comes to wearing clothes, and he puts on the same items probably for a few weeks on end. Um, but they're all part of this big yellow ball or the social systems, us being us as people. Right. Okay, so with the wear stage, as I said, there's not much we can do other than allow customers to wear our clothes or the clothes that we've created. The washing stage, however, the second stage, is the most environmentally demanding one, mainly because it uses a lot of water, detergents, and electricity to wash it. So we're going to have a look at this in a bit more detail. Remembering back to the Great Acceleration and this American idea of consumerism after World War II, and so you started to see the haves and the have-nots, or the developed world up here, living quite a comfortable lifestyle based on the notion of convenience. And one of those conveniences was to replace hand washing with a bucket, which was pre-1950s for pretty much the whole world, to uh, using the use of a washing machine. So it was, which is far more convenient than this method. One is capital intensive, which means we need to use a machine and energy, and the other one, all the energy comes from the human themselves, so physical hard work. And that's why there's, once again, there's an aspiration in many people in the world who say, well, I don't want to wash clothes like this because it's just simply hard work. I want a washing machine. And so people start moving along this path of what we call development, which comes at the price of the Earth's resources. Back to our wicked problem, as we mentioned earlier. So let's look at this washing machine in a bit more detail. Um, and I thought I'd show you something first before I show you these, talk about these stats. Where is it? As you can see by the duration of this YouTube clip that runs for 38 minutes, this guy has recorded his clothes being washed for that period of time. So if someone says to you that washing isn't exciting, check out his YouTube clips. What's more interesting is that 500,000 people have decided to watch his video as well. And so you get some quite interesting comments about well, the washing of clothes. But it is interesting because it's something that we do, but we don't think about very often, is um, the actual process of washing the clothes. We just chuck them in and sort of let the machine do its work. So back to some stats. There are 600 million washing machines on Earth. There's 2.3 billion people that own these washing machines or access these washing machines, which is about 1/3 of the world's population. So a couple of points there. One is not everyone has a washing machine. The majority of people do not have washing machines, but I suspect a lot, because of the arduous task of washing by hand, as I said before, I suspect a lot of people would like to have a washing machine. And as those people have the financial means to purchase one, then uh, water usage increases dramatically. So we're talking about between 50 to 100 litres of water per wash, 106 watt hours of electricity, whatever that means. The detergent used, always too much, because you always tend to put a little bit more, or at least I do. And the average times a week it's used in Australia, it's 2.5 loads per week. If we compare that to other countries, what's happened here? If we compare that to other countries, you'll see that there's variation between cultures as to how often they wash. So Western Europe, 165 cycles per household per year. And in Japan, it's close to 500. So, sorry, what's happening? Um, so the Japanese wash or use their washing machines twice as often as the average Australian. Okay, so it's one thing to look at um, how many times per year you turn on your washing machine and use it. But another level or another perspective that you can look at it is how full is the washing machine each time you use it, because unless it's 100% full, then it's inefficient. You're using too much power, or more power than you need to use, and possibly more water. It just depends. So what Burkholz did in this table, which is a little bit confusing, but he looked at 3 different cycles: whites and coloured cycle on the washing machine, easy care cycle, and the delicate cycle, and then looked to see how full the customer or the user of the washing machine made the washing machine before they turned it on. So in the case of whites and coloureds, 80% of the respondents said they started the machine before it was full, whereas 20% said they waited until it was full. When it came to easy care garments, the ones you can simply chuck in, it was kind of the reverse, where 22% said they often overload the machine when it's easy care garments. And then with delicates, it's interesting. Full capacity, 65% said they overloaded it. So whether that's a case of the consumer saying, well, when I do delicates, I'm going to do them all at once because they're obviously cumbersome when you've only got one or two delicates to wash, and so they'll tend to overload the machine. So there's prospects or opportunities there to seek to understand how consumers use their washing machine and how they relate the garment that you've made to washing. Because remember, the only relationship at the moment between the product developer and the consumer in this regard is the care label. And that's a rather simplistic, dare I say, sort of representative of the linear model of caring for a garment. And we'll see later how there's sort of different ways in which we can approach this topic. Uh, Washing machines. Not all washing machines are the same. So you've got in the United States, like Australia, we tend to see these ones, the vertical axis ones with the agitator in the center. In Europe, we tend to see these ones, the horizontal ones, where it sort of tumbles. So this is a much nicer, gentler wash. And the Japanese uses a sort of vertical axis one, but a little bit less. There's a little bit more tumbling that occurs. So it's sort of a hybrid between these two. So different washing machines use different amounts of water. And the vertical axis washing machines, the American and Australian ones, use something like twice as much water. So there's a significant difference with water usage depending on the washing machine. Which open or begs the question is, should we as a brand, a clothing brand, start to endorse certain washing machines, or should we become associated with the promotion of certain washing machines over other ones? Remember, these have been kept quite separate. When we sell the clothes, that's the end of it. But now we're starting to consider, well, should we be involved in selling washing machines perhaps, or at least informing the consumer of some of these facts? Um, and certainly, yeah, if you've got one of these ones, you'll know that they run forever. Like it just takes ages and ages. So, I'll talk about that in a minute. American households, 50% of the consumers use high or extra high, should be high, not large, water levels when they wash. 30% use medium or normal. 10% use low water level. So this is a bit like the idea with detergents. You tend to put a little bit more in. You know, when you're an affluent country, when you've got lots of stuff, you tend to go for a little bit more. When you buy a fridge, you tend to get one that's a bit bigger than really what you need. It's just part of human nature. So again, there's opportunity here to change consumers' perceptions of it. In Turkey, just as an example, households wash with 75% wash their clothes with very hot water, higher than 50 degrees, and 25% at more than 85. Whereas in Germany, it's virtually the other way. The average wash temperature is at 46 degrees and only 6% of the laundry is done at more than 60 degrees Celsius. Why? Cultural differences. So in Turkey, there's a perception that hot will clean your clothes better, it will kill the germs. And in Germany, they have a different outlook on it. So you've got to, when you do market, when you enter the market talking about these issues, you've got to be aware of cultural views of individuals as to what constitutes clean or how to clean something. If we look at the electricity consumption, energy consumption per wash cycle in kilowatts, which is the unit of measure for electricity, what you find here is Turkey stands out as the highest. Again, going back to what I just said before, it's because a lot of the electricity is used to heat up the water. Remembering European washing machines, or a lot of washing machines, have an internal heater which take in cold water and then heat it up internally. And then other washing machines, tends to be the vertical ones with the vertical agitator, take in hot and cold water. So you'll know with your taps at the back on the wall whether you've got hot and cold or you've just got cold coming in. So if you've just got cold coming in, then it uses more electricity to heat it up. And Turkey's a case in point. And in Japan, much lower levels. So that's the electricity side. On water consumption side, the Japanese use a lot more water. So if I go back, they don't use much electricity, but they use a lot of water, a lot of washing, a lot of cycles used in that process. In Australia, relatively low, 0.34, but getting up there when it comes to water consumption. So there's a kind of bit of a trade-off between one and the other. So you can go for, the point being, you can buy a washing machine which is horizontal like the European ones, um, don't use much water, but use a significant amount of electricity. So there's your trade-off between the two. There's no simple solution with these